this show on the road. Thank you all for tuning in at the start of the stream today. Hello everybody, it's your boss, Joe Boss, and welcome to another stream, another daily plan. This time I've called it the week ahead prep because that's what we're going to be mostly focusing on for this stream. Flash PMIs, Bank of Japan, and Trump's inauguration. We got a trade here on New Zealand dollar. The USD CAD trade from a couple streams earlier, if we check up on that, yep, that is not holding up. So we've been out of that for like the last 30 or so pips. The stop was at like 144. So that was kind of a no-go. But if you are reading the outlooks alongside with me in the Plan the Profit server, you go over here and you check out some of these outlooks from these institutions. These are all public outlooks from these groups. So, you don't need an account for these things here. There's a lot of groups that in order for you to read their research, you need to have an account with them. And these are just the public facing ones that you can get with a link. And you can get that through the link in the description. Go to the WAP page and you'll find the join Discord button. Hop in the Discord, go to the Outlooks research channel, and that's where you'll find all that stuff. And in the trade group, we read through the notes that I make curating some of those outlooks just together, just for ourselves, and just little snippets and like highlights essentially as we read them all together. So then everyone in the trading group is roughly on the same page as far as research is concerned. And it's always great when I get sent stuff like, hey, did you see this thing just happened today? That helps tremendously with my own research. So for the week ahead, we've done some of that research. We have a few things right off the bat. On Monday, you have the inauguration of Donald Trump. I have a couple of notes here. Watch the White House website. Watch the Truth Social page. Watch the Twitter pages of any secretaries that are in Trump's, or anyone who's in Trump's cabinet. Watch those very, very closely, because any news about any executive orders that get signed on the first day could create some market volatility. If there's nothing signed on the very first day regarding tariffs, you could probably see the US dollar weaken quite a bit if there isn't a day one tariff executive order. And until he does sign a tariff based executive order, or give some kind of comment about the tariffs he wants to implement, we could see some like skeptical weakening. Like, okay, until Trump says something, we're going to be selling the US dollar. That kind of shenanigans could go on next week, but you can put the kibosh on that real quick as soon as Trump says something. So it's incredibly important to watch out what he says. And it would especially make the dollar weak if he said anything like, oh, we're going to wait on tariffs for like next month, right? For Canada specifically, Canada could get hit particularly hard. And you might be reading this whole section on your own, right? Because you might be more interested in Canada. This is boondoggle. This is crazy. So Canada's parliament is suspended until March 24th. The election to replace Justin Trudeau won't happen until April or May. We don't know, and we won't know until Parliament reconvenes in Canada. Personally, this is my comment, I don't think Canadian sentiment is going to be positive at all. In fact, I think that the risks are to the downside for sentiment. The reason I'm bringing up sentiment is because we have the Bank of Canada Business Outlook survey coming out here, and we'll see how Canadians are going to be setting how businesses are going to be setting expectations going into the first half here of 2025 and the second half of 2025. We really kind of want to focus maybe on the shorter term, 1 to 2 quarters out expectations that they're setting here. Maybe they give year ahead expectations. That'd be good. I haven't brushed up on this survey recently at all. I forget what questions they ask. The info in the report could be useless depending on how aggressive Trump is on the tariff negotiations. Back on that point. Maybe the survey shows somewhat positive sentiment. Honestly, it should show a whole lot of uncertainty. There should be a lot of uncertainty. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We gotta watch out what happens with Canada. If there's any news of any tariff, any economic negotiation that Trump wants to instigate between now and when the next Canadian Prime Minister is put in, that could put further pressure on the dollar CAD and send this thing to like, what, 146? Yeah, call it the high 145s this month. You can see what I'm looking at, right? I'm looking at this peak right about here. And we could look at the week ahead because we have indicators that will allow us to do that. All right. Wow, check that out. Yeah, man. High probability of catching a low right there. That's where we bottom out for the week. So that's 145.4 up here. If we go back to the month, 145.4, that's actually right here. So you're just getting to the monthly peak. So I would not be surprised to see after inauguration, maybe some back and forth going on around Canada. Who knows? I see a risk of a move along these lines here. Let me go ahead and timestamp it real quick. Again, it's important to set your expectations. I know I set this expectation up in the last stream, but I guess this is going to have to hold off. I believe I haven't said anything about Gravel maybe in the last stream, because since the last stream we had Gravel come out, and Gravel effectively said, hey, we are going to be putting on more assets. The quantitative tightening update from the Bank of Japan, or Bank of Canada, my bad. Bank of Japan is the next topic. Bank of Canada had an update on their quantitative tightening policy, and that's not going anywhere. It's not tight enough. It's just not tight enough. You can go into the details, but I really don't want to go into the details here on the stream. I'm also not totally brushed up on it, so forgive me on that. There's plenty here in the central bank's research channel if you want to read about it, right? So there we go. And a quantitative tightening from Bank of Canada, and then the actual YouTube live stream of the speech. And I was watching that live, and it was kind of a whole lot of nothing, and they were saying, uh-oh. Yeah, not much going on there. Not much going on there. So that is on Monday. Tuesday, you have economic sentiment coming out of Germany, Canadian inflation, New Zealand inflation. I meant to put more stuff in here. I'm going to be over the weekend. I spend most of my time today working on my, reading the latest outlooks. And while we can just briefly talk about Zoo here, where most of the information I have is, S&P Global has said, hey, we do a survey of investment managers, and that's a sentiment survey. And when we look at our survey here from S&P Global of investment managers, they say that they're less optimistic about European equities. So S&P Global is saying something along the lines of, because investment managers are less optimistic about European equities, that could also put a negative light on the Zoo Economic Sentiment Index. So maybe a bit more of a bearish view on this front. Then you have Canadian inflation. It'll be important to see how that actually turns out. But that net, it seems like we're getting more disinflationary readings. So that much is good, but that also means that the Bank of Canada is going to be looser. And that could mean more risk off here, at least on the CAD side of things. And we can switch this for the next part, NZD USD. So if we go here, we set this expectation yesterday, and this is an actual trade. The yield spreads are super positive right now, short term, and over the last 7 days, but not like over the last month. So it's not a long-term trend. It seems like this is positive just over the most shortest of terms in the last week, pretty much. But it's mostly due to a move that's been probably in the last 24 hours. So I'm kind of skeptical of this yield spread move jumping higher and giving us a green print here. Simply because everything that I read about this New Zealand inflation print tells me that inflation in New Zealand is going to come in lower, that the New Zealand government is going to be really tight on cash, and they probably aren't going to be fiscally responsible enough. Like, the New Zealand is in a spot where they could face a downgrade in their credit rating for their bonds. Like, it's really bad. If I recall, I told Big this earlier. The New Zealand treasurer, if I recall correctly, the head of their treasury in New Zealand, said that they were looking at potentially letting the government tax charitable organizations in order to help assist and alleviate the deficit in New Zealand, because the deficit is so tight there. New Zealand needs growth right now. They need to increase their exports, but they were hit by all these natural disasters. It's just been horrible, and it's hurt their exports quite a lot. And now their currency is in the toilet. It's helping with their exports. Don't get me wrong. The currency is actually helping quite a bit, but now the currency is really, really weak. And a lot of guys who are doing commentary in the outlooks are saying, okay, the central bank isn't probably going to say or do much about anything related to the New Zealand dollar in this next RBNZ meeting in February. But they'll probably say something at the following meeting, I believe in April, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, net, the idea is just being short here. There's one thing I really liked about this particular trade, and that was how the timing dots lined up here, which is, hey, given this high, these are similar, given similar highs for the month here are following lows for the month here. And you can, maybe this makes a bit more sense why I drew this line, right? Like, given this high and given the expectations around, I should also preface, we're expecting lower quarter-on-quarter inflation. New Zealand inflation, New Zealand CPI is released every 3 months instead of every month, like in a lot of countries. So you end up with, a really big move on inflation prints in New Zealand, especially because of those quarterly prints. Lower frequency data. Now, with that said and done, this is coming next Tuesday on top of Trump. So if Trump says anything tariff related, that would hurt New Zealand. And the consensus is that the expected value is like 0.4, 0.5, which is apparently decelerating. If we get 0.4, 0.5 quarter over quarter inflation out of New Zealand, that would be a lower move, because that would allow the RBNZ to stay on a looser monetary policy effort with that kind of print. And I believe we already discussed this in a couple streams ago. I'll bring it up now. We were already expecting the RBNZ like pretty much to go at that February meeting, to do 50 basis points at that February meeting, especially after the business survey for New Zealand that just came out recently that said, hey, everything is going fine here. We're just a little concerned about fuel inflation at the moment because of oil prices, but other than that, it's nothing crazy. So, yeah, RBNZ's got a green light to go cut 50. Wednesday is going to be a very quiet day economically. So the loudest bang for the US dollar is probably going to be here. But really, you have to watch what Trump is doing pretty much every single day from the day he's inaugurated for the next 4 years. Like, don't get me wrong, it's one thing to say, oh, watch him closely over, the next 5 trading days to see if he says anything, especially on Wednesday, because Wednesday has you have Canadian PPI month over month. That's it, pretty much. That's pretty much it. So maybe Trump says something here, takes the opportunity to do something here. He'll probably be doing something every day of this week. He'll be hitting the ground running. He'll be doing something pretty much every single day. Like for the next 100 days. Like the first 100 days of a president's term are considered the days when you try and get the most immediate, easiest policy wins down. Okay, Thursday, business optimism in Great Britain, initial jobless claims, Australia manufacturing. Oh, flash PMIs. That's right. Thursday, we get flash PMIs for Australia and Japan. And then Friday, we get flash PMIs for the G7 countries. Friday is going to be insanely volatile. I put a little description here just to help describe like why the flash PMIs are important. They're used for forecasting a lot of economic indicators. Flash numbers are when 70% of the survey respondents have actually replied. That's what makes them the flash numbers. And then there's the final PMIs that come a bit later that give you that final 30%. That's what it's called, the final. And usually there's not a huge difference in that 30%. Sometimes there is, and that's a surprise, but most of the time it's usually in line with the flash numbers. And the flash numbers give you the jump of new information, like generally what direction are the PMIs heading right off the bat. So just to go back to Thursday, Bank of Japan interest rate decision. Let's head over to the yen real quick. This thing is probably going to keep going lower from here. I would not be surprised. Let me just check out this. Yeah, I would not be surprised to see a continuation somewhere around here. Let's go ahead and set that down to red. Timestamp this. Okay, cool. So this would be, I mean, don't get me wrong, expecting here to here is kind of equivalent in my book, like between 153.5 and 152. So it's kind of 150-ish pip range. I'll cut it in half. I'll put it at 153. The reason being is it's pretty much fully priced in now. It's like 80%, 90%, depending on who you ask. That the BoJ is going to hike rates at the meeting next week. And then they also give a quarterly outlook. And then you get flash services PMI, which are going to give us more information on inflation. And then there's the actual inflation rate that's coming out earlier on the same day. Given we have Aussie flash PMIs coming out there, check out Aussie yen. I wouldn't be, like all the yen pairs. If we go to, if we check this out, yen is actually currently only strong right now. Actually, no, yen's strong pretty much across the board here, it looks like, except against the Canadian dollar. Yeah. That's the economic calendar. I would not want to be short the yen at all. I want to be long the yen. And especially after the information we got from Himino the other day. I think that was around here. Himino, I think, spoke on Tuesday or Wednesday, right around here. What really sent this lower and what really shifted the odds in favor of a rate hike at the next meeting was so Himino is the deputy governor. He's the number 2 guy at the BoJ. The number 1 guy at the BoJ, Governor Ueda, came out and said, yes, wages are confidently moving in the direction that we want them to be moving. He was a bit more explicit. He said effectively the same things as Himino, but because it's the actual governor of the bank, and he just came out and said it and tried to push it, it seems like he was really trying to push the market to increase the odds of a rate hike. So that's what Bloomberg ran with. That's what Nikkei ran with. That's where all the news organizations are like, okay, we are moving into hike. And then all the pricing for all the yields started moving in favor of a hike. And so you can probably clearly tell when Udea came out to speak. All right. The other day here. And then also all this is just follow through. We'll likely see continued follow through on a stronger yen into next week. Like this, I would be quite surprised for Aussie yen, because we're looking at it, if we weren't below 95. Like this thing could very easily move to 95 and below 95. And you can see this is where most of the time you find your low. But again, this is most of the time, right? This is an aggregate statistic. It's like, okay, you could very easily end up around here, somewhere between 94.5 and 93. And it's kind of a guess. It's a falling knife. I mean, when you look at this chart and you see you have your bumps, higher probabilities at the bumps, right? And then you see this flat stuff, and then it's more transparent stuff, and then it just goes away. You can look on the right and just see that the odds of finding your low in these areas goes down a lot. So this is where you have the highest odds, and this is where you have the lowest odds. And then these are just conditional dots given this high. This is given similar highs in history. This is where we found prior lows. That doesn't mean that we can't go lower, right? This is just based on, hey, finding similar times in history that we've had our top here for the month. This is where the respective lows for the month have come in. I don't know how many of these dots were during an election year with flash PMIs and all this stuff that weren't heading really in the right direction. And by the right direction, I mean, yen is now moving in the right direction, but I mean the wrong direction for this particular chart. Actually, NZD-JPY would be a really, given the stories that we have here, yeah, this thing is really hitting the sack. This thing, wow, it fell 100 and I call it 170 pips if we round it. Yeah, so if you can focus on the major trends going on in the world for a couple of currencies, you can find the right cross pairs to trade. Like this hiking story out of Japan is great, and this issue with inflation out of New Zealand coming in lower and making the RBNZ want to stay on more looser policy isn't great for the New Zealand dollar. This thing I would, yeah. Oh, wow, look at that. There's actually some dots way down here. Yeesh. Yeah, that's kind of catastrophic. But this would be pretty bad. You know, New Zealand exporters would really like a weak New Zealand dollar, but this would be kind of really big movement. Yeah, volatility would be really picking up there. Poor New Zealand. I mean, this is one of the reasons why the Mrs. Watanabe thing existed. A lot of people lived in Japan, a lot of the women who ran the finances for a lot of families were really upset that the yen was losing value. So what they did is they would trade their family's money and currency hedge their savings against the currency inflating away. I think New Zealand, for the meantime, might need a Mrs. Watanabe, at least short term. So yeah, the final day here is flash PMIs. Just a quick little review. Monday, business outlook survey. That's cat. This is probably not going to turn out well, and there's continued risk that this gets worse over the next 2 months due to Canadian politics being horrendous and the US government not being able to really negotiate too effectively with the Canadians. So if Trump wants to enact tariffs on the Canadians, this would be an especially harsh time to do it. And so that would send us up, and away, like ridiculously up, and away on USD CAD over here. And then the inauguration. All right, we got that down. Services, PMI out of New Zealand. Employment data out of Great Britain. Economic index in Germany, not likely to come in super hot. Canadian inflation, probably disinflationary. New Zealand inflation, that's expected to come out disinflationary and really hit New Zealand. And then on the back of this, the following day, you have Bank of Japan, Japanese inflation. So all the yen pairs are going to be really kind of preparing to move on the day before. Like things will be moving for yen. Yen will be likely getting quite strong, especially after Tuesday, because who knows what Trump will do the day and the day after and how that might impact the yen. So most of the uncertainty will probably be on either the morning of, before the events come in, or on the day before when it's more quiet. We'll see. Before you start seeing like definitive yen strength. I mean, we'll see. Yen could just be getting stronger anyways, at least against the cross that it has. And then Friday, flash PMIs. This is going to impact all the big pairs. This is going to impact all the G7 countries, and it could fling things around a lot, especially if there's significant improvement out of Europe, because this can lead growth in GDP. So if you want to be risk on and short the US dollar, you want to see these flash PMIs come in really, really well. But the likelihood is that they're going to stay below 50, but slightly improve. That seems to at least be the consensus. And if they're already above 50, they'll just stay above 50 at a stable level. We'll have to see how they come when they print. And as we do the streams into next week, we'll go ahead and cover these in more detail about what our expectations really should be going into those flash PMIs. Okay. With all that said and done, there isn't much more for me to cover. We can just check out oil. Still hanging in there, coming down a bit into the end of the week. Gold rebounding here. Nice. Doesn't seem like much else is going on other than, okay, dollar strength, watch for some economic impact next week on those flash PMIs and Japan, yen trades, New Zealand, some Canadian volatility, some CAD volatility, and of course, watch wherever you can whatever Trump is saying, because if he says anything tariff related, you need to be able to get that information as quickly as possible to update your own expectations, to do your own risk management. Stay on top of this. And if you want to do this with people instead of on your own, hop into the Discord, and there's a thread here, Trump 47 tariffs. And you can hit this follow button or go into the 3 dots and hit follow. And anytime there's an update on Trump tariffs, we post in this research forum. And when you follow a thread, you'll get Discord pings and notifications on it. So if someone else finds something or I find something, we're watching Bloomberg and we just take a screenshot of the Bloomberg screen and we're like, hey, stuff's going on. This could actually be quite helpful and help in a more timely fashion than trying to do it on your own. So if you want to help yourself and, help others with the research as well, I'd always appreciate it when people inform me about stuff. Go ahead and hop into the Discord. And again, if you want the indicators, you get the indicators from the same spot as you join the Discord, which is the WAP chat. All right. I'm going to hop into the trading room voice chat here. So if you guys want to hang out and play a game of poker or just talk for a bit, get some updates, maybe ask some questions about this stuff, I'll be hanging out in there for a little bit. Alrighty, you guys. With that all said, I'm kind of done. I'm ready for the week ahead, more or less. I got a bit more work to do. Other than that, I will see you all in a bit.